Hello, hello, and welcome to the Hollywood Outsiders special WandaVision AfterHO. Today and each week after, we will be talking all about WandaVision, one episode at a time, what it means for the show, and also what it can mean for the MCU. These will be in the feed every Monday after a new episode, but if you support us on Patreon at patreon.com/The Hollywood Outsider, you will get early access by a few days. So make sure you go ahead and sign up at the link if you're already a supporter. Thank you so much. We love you. Now let's get on with the show. My name is Amanda Sink, and today I'm joined by none of our regular hosts, but two fellow guest hosts, Vinny Schwartz.
Howdy.
Howdy, howdy, sir. And Thomas Bex.
Een hele goede avond.
Oh, look at you coming over with your European greetings.
I just said have a nice evening in Dutch.
Oh, I like that. I didn't catch anything what you said, but I'm going to pretend like I did.
That's okay.
Just so everyone knows who's listening, if maybe you're just tuning into this episode, everything here is full spoilers. So from here on out, if you haven't watched the episode, you're going to know everything about it. But before we get into the episode, Thomas, what'd you think about Wanda and the Vision, or what did you know coming into it?
Yeah, I've seen practically everything of the MCU, so I'm very familiar with the lore that's established there. When it comes to the comic book lore, I'm more of an X-Men reader, although lately I've also branched out to Doctor Strange and Captain America and some other stuff. I was relatively familiar. Obviously, I knew the characters. I know exactly who the characters are. I know some of the major beats that they've been going through. They are one of the famous Marvel couples, Wanda and the Vision, Scarlet Witch and the Vision. I did not read that many specific comics about them, although I am planning on getting a bit more into that because I do find the Vision a fascinating character, and the same goes for the Scarlet Witch, who also popped up at the X-Men regularly because in the X-Men, in the Marvel comics, she is the daughter of Magneto and she's officially a mutant, but she could not be that yet in the MCU due to licensing stuff. So yeah.
So you're at least a little bit familiar with some of the property with it, just not fully invested into these characters coming into it. Where do you sit now that you've seen now 3 episodes?
Well, I have the habit of just reading up on stuff that I want to know about if I'm not familiar. So for instance, I knew a lot about the Infinity Gauntlet and Thanos and stuff, so I didn't really need reading up on that, but I do not know that much about Wanda and Vision, so I've been reading up a bit more on that. And when it comes to the show, is that I was told that episode 3 would start giving us some answers, and they start delivering on that. So it started out pretty weird. It stays weird, which is good. But we're getting more into the MCU now.
Yeah, by the end of the episode, you at least are starting to realize and no, because we all had an idea that eventually we'd get out of this. We just didn't know when we would see something beyond this TV sitcom. And from my understanding, they're going to continue that, but I imagine it'll become less and less throughout the episodes. It just is going to depend on what is happening in the exterior world from Wanda.
Yeah, it will kind of depends on what it exactly is that is going on.
Yeah. Well, that's the perfect segue to talk about what the hex is going on. Get it? Hex. So this is where we're going to discuss our overall thoughts on the episode, some of the new key characters, which this episode does not really have that many, and dissecting the plot points to figure out what the hex is going on. This episode 3, Now in Color, was written by Cameron Squires and directed by Matt Shakman. This is the episode where Wanda's pregnancy fritzes her powers as she and Vision prepare for a very accelerated delivery. Now, first of all, as men that don't have children that I know of, if you found out the night before that your person was pregnant and you had 2 babies the next day, would you be freaking out like Vision?
It would be kind of weird if that happened, yeah.
Yeah, I'm glad we get like a whole 9 months, in the real world.
I think everybody involved needs that time to adjust to the new situation. I mean, not even getting a baby room ready within 24 hours would be almost impossible.
Unless you're Wanda and you have those Scarlet Witch powers where you can just do everything with the flick of your finger.
if you can control chaos magic, then anything can happen.
Fair enough. So the only new character that we really get here is Dr. Nielsen, played by Randy Oglesby. Thomas, do you want to talk a little bit about your impression of the Doctor? He's a pretty minor character here. He's really just serving to tell them the expectations of the pregnancy, but he does deliver some comedy.
He is kind of the comic relief here, but he also delivers one very important line. And he's a bit sexist.
He is that too.
A lot of the... He's unintentionally sexist.
Yeah.
I think it's like a result of being a doctor in the 70s, I guess, being a man in the 70s.
Yeah.
Like automatically assuming that the lady will be a good nurse. Yeah, I mean, why a nurse? I mean, she just got to use.
Why can't she be a doctor?
Exactly. So we don't do all that shit anymore here. But it's very in line with, I guess, with how sitcoms were in the 1970s. I can't say that I would seen that many 1970s sitcoms, because the ones I saw, European and American, were more 1980s. But it did look familiar, and I understood that the way they, especially in the beginning, the way they shot the conversation with the Doctor is completely in line with how they shot 1970s sitcoms and everything. So they do keep that thing going. For the Doctor himself, mostly comic relief until the end. Can I also already talk about that? Or
yeah,
do you want to
go
wait for
ahead.
that?
Go ahead.
Because in the end he says, because he's trying to go on holiday. And then, of course, in natural sitcom hijinks ensure, and Vision has to pick him up to help him deliver the kids. And then Vision brings him back, and then he kind of says, "Well, I guess my holiday will not continue anymore. You know what it is with these small towns; they're very hard to escape." And that's where a bit of the real world filters in, because I think right now that all these people that are there, with the possible exception of Vision, are actually real people who are stuck in that reality with her. It's some kind of pocket reality she has created willingly, or at least participated in creating, that she is sort of in control of, in the way that someone can control their dreams, which is also why I think the episode ended with Daydream Believer by the Monkees. Not just because the Monkees were a 1970s sitcom and that song is very time appropriate, but also because that is a sign about the show itself, that Wanda is in some kind of dream state where she is both in control and not completely in control. And we saw something like that happen in the first episode. We saw hints like that happen in the second episode. And we've seen hints like that now as well, which actually made me want to adjust my screen. But I guess we'll get there eventually.
Vinny, any impressions? I know Thomas went over some of the key points of the Doctor, but any takeaways for you or your impressions of this episode? Did it work for you?
Overall, I felt like less happened. I don't know if that's the right way to phrase it, but I feel like less happened compared to the last two, except for that very end stinger, which we'll get to later, I guess. But other than that, overall, it was pretty entertaining, but I don't know, for me, the show has its moments where it just kind of slows down a little too much. And I don't know, I guess it's hard to keep my attention or something.
So you're still having trouble staying completely invested in the series with where it's at right now? Because I know you mentioned in the last recording we did for episodes 1 and 2 that the sitcom-esque was getting a bit tiring for you already, but you were excited about the story. So are you feeling still that kind of draining?
It's not quite that bad anymore. Probably the moving into a different era helped. But I suppose a little bit still, that grinding. Like, I appreciate like the sitcom aspect to it, and they do those parts pretty well. And we do get a little bit of Marvel thrown in, but I guess I'm looking to kind of move into that a little bit faster.
Okay, so it's getting a little slow for you.
I'm probably just impatient. That's probably a me thing. They're probably fine.
Aren't we all? Well, let's talk about some of those really key plot points. The first one that we should talk about, just to kind of get it out of the way, is the Hydra Find the Goddess Within commercial. And this is the one where the woman is having a really hard time in life, but all she needs is an escape to her bathtub and everything will be fine. Bizarre commercial. Obviously, there's a Hydra reference here. But on top of that, what are you guys taking away as it relates to Scarlet Witch from this commercial?
Well, again, it's the Hydra throwback. But then you have the line about escaping to your own reality, which is kind of touching on what's going on here. And it's kind of teasing at that this is not the real world. This is something else within the real world.
Yeah, well, all commercials have referenced something from Wanda's troubled past.
Yeah.
We had the toaster, the ticking toaster, which probably represents the bomb made by Stark.
Yeah.
That took her parents. Then you had the Strucker watch, where Baron von Strucker was, of course, the person who experimented on her and Pietro to give them their powers through the mind stone. So it would make sense that this also somehow has to do something with Wanda's past that we should be aware of, but it could also have something to do with the future. Kevin Feige said that those commercials were actually very important and told something very important about the story. Now, apparently, in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., in the 4th season, is where something has happened, and the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. are living in a virtual reality called the Framework. And they are living in a world where Hydra has taken over the world. There is this reference where Coulson says, I would have figured it out a long time ago, because Daisy comes into that world to rescue them, to set everything straight. And then Coulson said to Daisy, I would have figured it out a long time ago if it wasn't for the mind control soap. And Daisy's like, what? So yeah, the blue soap everyone uses, Hydra loads it up with chemicals. It seeps into our bloodstream, implants false memories in our brains. They want us to believe that it is a magical place, but don't worry, I make my own soap now. And it's too big of a coincidence that now they're talking about blue Hydra soap. And that was also mentioned on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., because Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. is in canon.
And this takes me into something that I started thinking about in this episode, and I realize that it's not a perfect theory, and I know we'll talk about them, but to me, it's just, there's moments where I start to feel like Wanda is in this, in some manner, unwillingly, and these other people like Geraldine, aka Monica, are trying to actually help her get out and help her recognize what's actually going on and snap her out of it. And that soap could relate to that concept too, but there's not enough evidence that points to that in terms of the contrary, where she's willingly doing it.
Well, maybe she made a deal with the devil.
Yeah. Good old possibly Ralph there.
Yeah. Well, as I said, she seems to be aware of, or she seems to be in control, but also not completely in control.
Yeah.
And everything red has to do with she's not in control. So we had the red helicopter in the first episode. We had the blood from the Queen Bee. What was her name? Dottie.
Yeah. Emma Caulfield's character.
So that's something that happened that was not in control of that area. And this episode we had the stork that she tried to zap away with the red mist, but didn't. She was not in control there. So that's interesting to see that happening.
Yeah.
So I think that's interesting because my two theories are either S.H.I.E.L.D. is doing this to her, or S.H.I.E.L.D. is just observing and trying to get her out. Obviously, we'll find a little more concrete evidence one way or the other for one or the other. But so far to me, both are equally plausible.
Sword seems to be involved, yes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they're involved one way or the other. But as to if they're the ones who put her in this simulation, or another thought I had was she did somehow subconsciously create this little pocket dimension, and that containment field we see at the end is to obviously contain that pocket dimension and observe it and what's going on. And like these people were pulled in either voluntarily or they were just accidentally swept up in whatever's happening.
Yeah, because she seems to be in New Jersey. The area code of the phone number, this little town is placed in New Jersey. Could be that she just took over a town somehow, and that is happening there, that she decided, because it's all too perfect, the white picket fences, everything. And I also think that Vision, that is her vision of Vision, and not Vision himself necessarily, because Vision himself would not react in the way that this Vision is reacting.
Yeah.
Vision himself is an android who is very logical and very like neutral. He doesn't panic. He doesn't.
Yeah, the explosive emotions are definitely more Wanda than they are him. And in the last episode, we saw a bit of him losing some of that control, or more so him just not having control, because, or actually the first episode, I mean, in that first episode, he seems to not have full control, because when they're at the dinner and Mr. Hart starts to go down, he basically is waiting for Wanda to instruct him to help Mr. Hart. That's not something that Vision would typically do. He wouldn't wait and stand idly by as someone is potentially dying. He would immediately react and handle the situation.
That was also the first instance where you see that Wanda is actually in control, because his boss's wife keeps telling her, help him, help him, help him, help him, until she finally has Vision help him. She tells Vision to help him. So, and that's one, and nobody does anything there. Almost nobody seems to do anything out of their own volition. It all has to fit in somehow in this reality that Wanda has created.
And speaking of the reality that she's created, now she has her little babies. She's got her twin boys, Tommy and Billy, which pulls from the names from the comics of her children that were also artificial, and she loses them, and that becomes a whole thing. So this was the majority of the episode focused on her going through the full 9 months of pregnancy in like 10, 15 minutes and delivering her children.
Yeah, so from the comics, Billy is Wiccan and Tommy is Speed. So Billy gets his powers from his mother, and Tommy gets has the same powers as his uncle, Pietro. One thing that might also be going on, is why weird shit is happening, is because Billy is also not in control of his powers from the womb. So it could also be that there are two magicians there, because both Wanda and Wiccan's magic comes from them being mutants and not from them being supernatural, which makes it a bit different from other magic users as Doctor Strange or Dr. Voodoo or Agatha Harkness for that matter. So it's very interesting. Of course, it's a classic sitcom thing that that they're arguing over the names and then it turns out to be twins. So I love how constantly they manage to take these elements and put them in that sitcom thing. Platform. Template.
Yeah, there's a word out there that we're just not.
Yeah. Format. I'm brain farting on right now. I'm not. I'm not a native speaker. I have an excuse. So yeah, but in the comics, Tommy and Billy are also created by Wanda, but they are created unknowingly by her from shards of Mephisto's soul, and I think that is also the case here, and that could be the deal with the devil thing that is going on. So it could also mean if you see what has happened so far with Wanda, what has happened with her when she basically loses everything she had. If this also means that eventually she's going to lose her twins, very bad stuff is going to happen. Which might be how they're setting her up as a potential villain for the next Doctor Strange movie. Speaking
of Doctor Strange, because I know you've got the Doom connection understanding here, and we talked about Mephisto a little bit. How do you think Doctor Strange and Doom might connect in here into this world? Yeah, so Mephisto is basically Marvel's devil. Marvel has several devils, but Mephisto is the main one. And Mephisto has a lot of links with other heroes and villains. An important one is Doctor Strange, because Doctor Strange is the ultimate defense against all things supernatural, and Doctor Strange has gone head to head with Mephisto many times. I think he is one of the few people who occasionally manages to outsmart Mephisto, because Mephisto, he is the devil, he is damn smart, you don't want to make a deal with him.
But another important one is Doom, Doctor Doom, who is obviously not yet in the MCU, but who is bound to come now that the Fantastic Four rights are back with Marvel. Because what happens is that Doom's mother was a sorceress whose soul was taken by Mephisto, and Doom went into the Hell Realm to try and get his mother's soul back, and by doing that he damaged his face so much that he did not want to show anyone his face, and that is why he is always wearing a mask. And that is also why he has a massive grudge against Mephisto. So there is a very clear connection. So they could use this to set up Mephisto as the big bad, or as one of the big bads for the MCU Phase 4 and 5. And I have some more theories on that later when we talk about the future, or how this could impact the future of the MCU.
Vinny, any thoughts for you on the Doctor Strange Doom connection here with Wanda and Vision and Mephisto, all of that?
I mean, no, not really. He pretty much nailed it all on the head. And, I mean, obviously with the MCU, they just kind of take the comics as not so much their Bible, but their guidelines. So they could do any number of things, but those are all very plausible options for them going forward.
One thing that I don't think that we touched on, and I guess correct me if I'm wrong, but Mephisto is also the one who absorbed Wanda's children and left her emotionally wrecked in the comics. So not only is he incredibly powerful, but there's a long history of pain and despair linked there for Wanda. So it'll be interesting to see if this is kind of their way of reenacting that, and if something to that effect will happen again. But obviously, time will tell.
Definitely. As I said in the comics, her sons were created from shards of Mephisto's soul, and absorbing them. Just Wanda is a potential nuclear bomb that can go off. She is in potential one of the strongest Avengers there is, because she can manipulate reality, which we see her do unconsciously and consciously constantly at the moment. So if she goes off, if like what is happening now is because of her loss of vision, what happens when she loses her children is going to be nuclear.
Yeah,
it's not gonna not gonna want to be there.
Well, and in this episode, we finally get to see a bit of emotion and look back from Wanda on Pietro's loss, her loss of her brother, because when Geraldine is talking to Wanda and she just has her children, she's really excited. Then there's this moment where she is reminded that she is a twin herself, but her brother died. And so there's this moment where it's really somber and you're not really sure if Geraldine's going to be comforting and, I'm so sorry. And she does that, but then she asks that big question about Ultron killed him. And everything starts to change. And this was a pretty big moment, right, Vinny?
Right. Because from that moment, she kind of has this realization that she doesn't know who the real Geraldine is, and then she takes full stock of her, notices that she's saying odd things. She has a pendant with the sword logo on it, and decides that she needs to leave. Not only leave her house, but her reality. And literally yeets her out of the dome.
Yeets her.
Just tosses her, where some men in some black trucks roll up, guns drawn. So that also leads me back to more questions. Either Geraldine's a sword agent and they have a weird way of checking in on her to make sure she's okay, or she infiltrated Sword to go in and try to wake up / free Wanda. But now that she's been ejected from her reality, Sword is probably going to be there to take stock of her and see what she's learned and what she was doing there.
Well, we did notice one thing, because she got thrown out of that reality, but she was still in her 1970s clothing, makeup, everything. So that would tell us that whatever Wanda is creating there also lives on in this reality. Which is very interesting, because that could potentially mean that her children can be here as well, no matter, depending on obviously on what's going to happen. Or if she somehow rebuilt Vision, that Vision could also live on in this reality.
And you're talking a lot about living, but there's also the potential for death. If something happened to one of them in there, then like if she would have killed Geraldine, that could have been the end for Geraldine/Monica. But obviously she let her live. And I don't know, maybe her spine is broken at this point because she took a pretty big fall. But everything that's happening there is continuing on. So it's just a matter of, I guess, sourcing out which things are real and which ones aren't, because we don't have concrete information that everyone in there is real in some capacity. Geraldine could have been, but maybe Vision isn't. We don't know any of that for sure just yet. So it'll be interesting to see if some of them maybe are a figment of her imagination or an alteration of reality, and if others have been just themselves infiltrating.
Well, Geraldine is also unique in that just before she's ejected, Vision is talking to his neighbors, Agnes and Herb, after Herb had cut into his
so
his
weird.
stone fence. So they're just kind of chit-chatting over that. Who, Agnes, pretty much a dead ringer for Agatha now that she's moved that brooch to a pendant on a necklace. Same one. Pretty good indicator, so I'm going to hold on to that theory.
You did a good job with that one.
He goes over and starts talking to them, and then they mention Geraldine and how she's unique in that it sounds like she doesn't really have a central point in this reality. Like, she doesn't have a home. She just kind of shows up.
Yeah.
And Herb almost says that she's there to do something, and that him and Agnes both realize this, and they know what she's there to do, but something makes Agnes remind him, like, don't say that. Just drop it. Go along with the facade. Keep it going. Don't say what she's here for. So I thought that was really interesting.
I think what he tried to say is that we're all trapped here, and anyone entering that reality gets trapped there too and is automatically transformed into whatever era she is currently experiencing. I think that is what happened with Monica Rambeau. She went in there as an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and the same as the Beekeeper, I think, because the agent of S.W.O.R.D., sorry. They managed to get in, but then then either Wanda throws them out or transforms them to fit in that reality. And when Wanda brought up Pietro, that allowed Geraldine or Monica to remember who she was and bring back that bit from the real world. Maybe she tried to snap her out of it, because we heard in the second episode we did hear someone on the radio, which apparently was Randall Park's character, the FBI agent from Ant-Man, saying, "Wanda, who's doing this to you? Who's doing this to you?" So that would also imply that she's not fully compliant person in this. But yeah, it's clear that there is something going on in there. And Agnes looked scared even. And what this reminded me of, have you both seen Shutter Island?
Yeah.
Right, yeah.
Okay, spoilers for Shutter Island. Because in Shutter Island, if you've seen it for the first time, you know nothing about it. Leonardo DiCaprio's character turns out to not be an FBI agent, but turns out to be an inmate. So he goes through that whole movie until the end, well, with everybody knowing who he is, except he himself. And I get the impression that Wanda is a bit like that as well. That everybody in this reality is scared of her because they know what she can do. And they are trapped in there, but they can't really do anything about it. That's also why Dottie said, "No, when Wanda said, I won't hurt you." And Dottie said, "I'm not so sure about that." And Agnes looked frightened when she was talking to Herb there. So that's also interesting to see. And about the brooch, we got a closer look of that now. And I saw a screenshot where they zoomed in a bit, and the brooch depicts the Grim Reaper with two children.
Oh.
So that's an interesting, very interesting depiction on the brooch. Also, the Grim Reaper is a bad guy from the Marvel Universe who has fought the Scarlet Witch and the Vision in the past, and who is hinted at in the second episode. So they show in the opening sequence of the second episode, you see this cut through of their house, and in between floors, you see the mask of the Grim Reaper. I did not know that either. I had to have that pointed out because the Grim Reaper was not a known entity to me. But apparently it is an existing Marvel villain who also has ties to Mephisto.
So it seems like we're all on the same page that we think Mephisto is going to be coming into this world, into the show.
Or maybe it's already there. Maybe Mephisto is Vision.
Or that. There is some thoughts that Ralph, who is Agnes's husband, could also be him. I think, Vinny, that was what your thought was in our last episode, right?
Right.
But I think you're spot on when it comes to Agnes, or Agatha Harkness, because she has to be Agatha Harkness, who is a known associate of Mephisto in the Marvel Universe. And now she also says, when Vision asks about the blackout, she says, everything went out, but I don't mind because Ralph looks better in the dark anyway. So, she's definitely married. And
shade to her husband.
It's nothing but shade to her husband.
All the time.
All the time. But in the first episode, she makes a remark, and I'm not sure if you guys touched on that, the date of her marriage. She mentions that she talks to Wanda about the date that they were married, and she said, "Oh, my Ralph would not remember it unless they made a brand of beer that is July 4th or something like that." And that date is the date of the Salem witch trials.
Huh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Look at you little book of knowledge.
And witches were said to be married to the devil. Everything points at Mephisto.
Yeah.
So I think Vinny is 100% correct that Ralph is Mephisto.
So let's talk about the Vision, where we talk about what's coming and how it connects to the MCU, because we've gotten into it a little bit already. So we all kind of agree on Mephisto. And Thomas, I think you have pretty strong feelings about Dr. Doom, right?
Well, yeah, of course, because he's an awesome villain. And he's
so you're just excited.
Yeah, well, he's one of the few villains that can take Thanos' place as an overarching big bad, because Doom is that huge, and he is officially maybe a Fantastic Four villain, but everybody has gone up against him or up with him because he has allied with the Fantastic Four, with the X-Men, and with the Avengers as well. He is a very complicated character, which makes him a very interesting character. Even though he might not be anywhere in this show, what happens in this show could affect that in the future. And, well, it is clear, I mean, Feige already said that this show leads directly into Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness. So what we're going to get is the multiverse. And I was thinking, they have this thing where they do these overarching plot lines. The Infinity Gauntlet was the one for the first 3 phases. And I think what we're not going to get now is Secret Wars. And Secret Wars is 2 things. You have the original Secret Wars, where they first meet the Beyonder. And the Beyonder is a being from a different dimension who is basically an all-powerful god. But something happens that causes a rift where he sees our universe and he gets fascinated by it, and he collects all Earth's villains, or the most important villains and the most important heroes. And he creates a planet called Battleworld, and he creates that from pieces from all different planets, including a piece of Earth. He basically transports Denver onto Battleworld, and he says, and he gets all the heroes there, so the Fantastic Four, the Avengers, the X-Men. He gets the villains there, Doctor Doom, the Sinister Six, the Wrecking Crew, Magneto, Kang the Conqueror, and he gets Galactus there. And he basically says, whoever wins gets all his wishes granted. And that was Secret Wars was the first crossover in Marvel. I think it was from 1985, and it was basically a big toy commercial. That was what it originally was for. However, it did introduce us to several things there, and it had some very important things happening there that affected the Marvel Universe in the comics, like Spider-Man found his black suit there that later turned out to be a symbiote, for instance. Now, there was a Secret Wars 2 where the Beyonder goes to Earth, but that is not nearly as interesting a storyline. But what happens later is, I think it was like 10 years ago, they did another Secret Wars. So that it was not Secret War, but this was Secret Wars. And what happened there is Doom, and Doom plays also a very important role in the first Secret Wars. But in that Secret Wars, Doom basically becomes a god, manages to get the power of the Beholder and collapses the entire multiverse. And what happens there is, for instance, that characters who are from other realities, like Miles Morales, who is from the Ultimate reality of Marvel, he somehow gets drawn, and because all that's left after Secret Wars is one reality, the Marvel 616 reality, the comic book reality. And any characters that were interesting from other realities were brought into that reality. So Miles Morales now was actually in the Marvel 616 universe. And I think that is the way that they're going to go. I think they're going to set up Secret War, the first Secret Wars, and I think they're going to end it with the Secret Wars, so they can set up the multiverse, bring in any characters they want. They can bring in the Fantastic Four from a different Marvel universe. They can bring in X-Men. They can bring in mutants from different. They can do all these kinds of things. They can bring in Kang the Conqueror, and then eventually, in order to save themselves a lot of hassle, they can go in the way of Secret Wars and use that to collapse the entire multiverse again, where they can bring all those characters back into their own reality. And that is what I think is what the next 10 years of Marvel movies and TV shows are going to work towards.
Do you know what all of that reminded me of? That meme from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, where he's got all of these pieces that he's trying to connect the dots for, and he's just got everything, and you're like, what is happening? That's the look on his face. You've kind of created a map for yourself of what you think the whole overarching idea is. And I don't know about Vinny, I can't speak for him, but I was just like thinking about WandaVision, like, what's that going to mean for the next movie in MCU? But
I mean, again, pretty much what I had in my mind, especially with Multiverse of Madness immediately, with a little bit of spoilers, but some of their casting, what multiverse means to Marvel. It's basically the way they started Multiverse is, hey, we got this cool idea. And they're like, that's cool, but that's not going to fly in our main continuity, so we're going to make you a separate universe. So they eventually got to a point where some characters in their alternate universes were actually pretty cool and stood out more than the rest of the continuity, whereas others in their main continuity fell off. So they had these events where, like you said, the universes collapsed, they cherry-picked, and then they made one streamlined one, for the most part. And that kind of stuff is what excites me the most about when you cross universes like this. You can kind of do whatever you want. You can, if you really want, you can get Iron Man back, but it's going to be a different Iron Man. You know,
right.
Maybe he's still
you can get a young Iron Man.
Yeah, he could be younger. He could be dealing with alcoholism still. He can be actually a little bit more, maybe like an anti-hero-ish. Like maybe he's more like War Machine. They got the new run of Iron Man where he's an AI and there's a new guy being Iron Man. It's literally limitless. And again, like he said, you can pull in the Fantastic Four because they've already said they're going to do that. You can pull in the X-Men. You can start moving towards bigger cosmic things, especially now with Sword. And you had that setup with Fury working with the Kree, which also everyone's been pointing to Secret War. So you got all this stuff that basically is moving in that direction, so you can pull in stuff like Galactus and just go nuts with it, basically.
Is there anything you don't want to see?
That I don't want to... a PG-13 Deadpool.
I 100% agree, and good thing that Kevin Feige has already said that Deadpool is going to be R.
One thing that I really want to see, I don't know if I'll ever get it. We could, though, with Morbius and Blade coming up. We got Mephisto being introduced, so you could probably try to rope in a new Ghost Rider or bring back Nick Cage, whatever. I don't care, either way.
No Nick Cage.
You got Doctor Strange. You're getting Brother Voodoo.
Scarlet Witch.
They really want to bring back John Bernthal's The Punisher. Just roll all those guys together and give me Midnight Suns. That's what I really want.
I would love to see that. I would love to see more Supernatural. There is just... the possibilities are endless. And I would love to see Monica Rambeau in action, because she is actually with her 70s hair, she looks very much like the first incarnation of I think it was Captain Marvel. She was Captain Marvel, and around the era of the first Secret Wars. And she later became Photon, I think was her superhero name. She was the daughter of Captain Marvel's friend in the Captain Marvel.
Yeah.
And her power was that she could basically transform into some sort of energy light thing She was a really cool character, but I didn't really know her that much. So I'm looking forward to seeing that character turn into a full-blown superhero as well. And also, what I would love to see, and the groundstones have already been laid, is Young Avengers. Because we're getting Cassie Lang, we're getting the new Hawkeye, Katie Bishop, but two other very important members of the Young Avengers are Wiccan and Speed.
Yeah.
Yeah. We're definitely going to have a Young Avengers movie or TV show in the near future. And the Young Avengers actually were the inciting incident for the first Civil War. Now, we already did Civil War, but that doesn't mean it can't happen again.
Well, it did happen again. In the comics,
yeah.
There's Civil War.
In the comics, yeah.
We could always do that again.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. And indeed, what Vincent said, Marvel doesn't adapt their storylines. They take the ideas, sometimes just the title, just what they did, what they always used to do with the James Bond movies. They sometimes just took a title and created the whole thing around it. Marvel does the same thing. And considering we have about 90 years of comic book storylines to work with, we got so much cool stuff is going to come up. And if they really do Secret War, the first one especially, then I'm going to probably have the same reaction I had when I saw the post-credits sting for the first Avengers movie, and I realized they were going to do Infinity War. So yeah, it's gonna be great, and I'm very much looking forward to episode 4 and see how this is going to continue.
Is there anything you guys are hoping that we see in this next episode of WandaVision? Something that you want clarified by the end of the next episode, seeing as we'll be nearing that halfway mark?
I want to see more Sword.
Yeah, I've just been kind of impatient. I like the comedy aspect. It's nice, but, mostly comic relief, meaning it relieves you from the tension or the action, but when it's constant, it's different. Especially when this is a Marvel property. This is a weird Marvel property, so I'd like to get to the weirdness. Obviously, randomly being pregnant and giving birth in, the same day, that's pretty weird. But, we started I just really want answers. That's all it is to it. I'm really bad at keeping secrets and surprises, because I want the end result. I want it now. I just want to be there. I want to know what's going on. That's my problem. So I want a little bit more insight, or I guess clarity, into what's the level of control that Wanda has. Is she shaping this reality, or is she being forced to be in this false reality? So,
or both.
Yeah, or both. I don't need to know. We kind of have an idea of who. We don't know exactly why. I'm fine not knowing why. I just want to know that level, because I feel like we're already 3 episodes in. The next episode is a really good time to start identifying, to me, 4 or 5 would be, how much power and control does she have over this world, over this prism of false reality? So
when you say why, I want to just touch on my theories a little bit more. Either Sword is using her to try to open these rifts to multiverses, to try to get more heroes under some new Avengers initiative. Either Fury's cooking up or someone else, because he knows something big's gonna happen. So he's like, I need everyone. I need them. I need multiples of everyone. If you can get me 5 Captain Americas, I will take them. Or, again, like I said, someone like Mephisto may be offered to kind of ease her mind, give her, some control in this little pocket dimension that's all hers, while he siphons her powers for something. Who knows? So that's where I'm at. Either Sword is just observing and using her, or Sword is trying to help her get out.
I think it's the second. one. Yeah. And I just also realized something. She brought Vision back because she was in love with him, but maybe that's going to happen, but why hasn't she brought Pietro back?
Yeah. That's a good point.
So yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah, and we'll see the ramifications of it in Doctor Strange too.
Mm-hmm. Or maybe even in some other properties already.
Yeah, maybe.
Who knows?
Well, Thomas, thanks for joining us for this episode of WandaVision's AfterHO. It was a pleasure. You've been on the Hollywood Outsider before, so it's not like it's new, but it's always good to have you back.
It's always fun to do this. I'll happily return in a future episode if you want me.
All right, sounds good. Well, that's it for this episode. Remember, you can find all of the Hollywood Outsider content on our website, thehollywoodoutsider.com. You can also follow us on our social media channels. We're on Twitter @BuyPopcorn, Instagram @TheHollywoodOutsider. We're even on LinkedIn if you're interested in that. And you can find all of our reviews there. Don't forget to sign up at Patreon, patreon.com/TheHollywoodOutsider, so you can get all of these WandaVision AfterHO episodes early on top of a ton of bonus content. Again, if you're a supporter already, thank you so much. And remember, the next time you watch WandaVision on your couch, buy popcorn.